All right, welcome back to Campus Pressbox podcast number 37. Today, it's me, Mike Wilson, your Pac-12 senior writer, joined by Mitch Gatzke, our in-house Big Ten, Michigan State fan. Well, maybe I should just say Michigan, I think. But
no, you can call me a State fan. I'll take it.
Fan. Okay, you'll take that. Okay, just all over Michigan fan. So, Mitch, how's it going up there in the frozen north?
Doing pretty well, hanging in there. It's not frozen yet, so we're doing all right.
Yeah, you got to look on the positive side of things, right? So, yeah. All right. Well, hey, we have was this the second or third week of the rankings coming out of the playoff committee rankings?
I think this is the third week.
So it's third week. Okay. Yeah. I just whatever reason I just got it messed up in my head. So we have a lot to talk about with that. There's a lot. I don't know necessarily. There's a lot of shakeup necessarily amongst the top four. I think the top four, maybe even five, stayed the same. Was there anything that you saw with the rankings that surprised you at all, Mitch?
No surprises. I just think it was interesting with all of those ranked teams losing last week. We actually didn't see a whole lot of movement. I mean, there were some teams that fell off, Baylor, Stanford, LSU, some others. But, with a lot of those teams in the middle taking losses, that really helped out the others that had lost on the same day.
Yeah, I mean, I take a look at the top four and it's the same, and then you got Iowa just sitting there, just looking on, and Oklahoma State on the outside there. Do you have any problems with? And I hear some people talk about this, that Alabama and Notre Dame have one loss, but then you got Iowa and Oklahoma State sitting there at 10-0 on the outside looking in.
No, it's a ridiculous argument in my opinion. Just because a team has taken a loss doesn't mean that they're automatically not as good as some other teams. You see that happen a lot with, well, for example, Houston right now, 10-0. Would anybody be willing to make the argument that Houston is a better team than Alabama just based on the fact that they have no losses, whereas Bama has the one? I don't think so. In my book, you can, I don't want to say give a pass to teams like Alabama and Notre Dame, but you can understand when they do take a loss during the season. It's incredibly tough to go through an entire fall and not lose a game. The best teams do, and we see that in the rankings.
Yeah, I don't think, and I'm totally with you on that. I mean, if anybody was going to sit there and try and make an argument about Houston being better than Alabama or any of these one-loss teams that are in the top 10, I'd almost laugh underneath my breath when I heard that. So yeah, with me, I don't see anything that's different, that's really surprising. I mean, I think when it gets down to it, Iowa's not going to the playoff. I don't see them beating a Michigan State or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. So they'll be, that's going to play itself out. Oklahoma State, you never know with the backloaded schedule with the Big 12 right now who's going to really come out on top. And they still have that game left with Oklahoma, and that'll be that's going to be a barn burner of a game. That game, if everything kind of stays the way everybody I think thinks it's going to be. So matchup wise this weekend, Mitch, let's just start with this one. Let's start Oklahoma and TCU. What do you see with that matchup?
It's a great matchup. You're looking at injuries for TCU. Trevon Boykin, I heard yesterday he might be able to go. Of course, Josh Doxson, his top receiver, is going to be out for the rest of the season. That's a huge blow to the Horned Frogs. Oklahoma is quietly playing great football again. They took that one inexplicable loss to Texas and kind of disappeared from everybody's radar after working their way up. But they're right back in the thick of things. A win here and a win next week against Oklahoma State. The Sooners will be right in the playoff. And
Do you think writers are still holding, or not writers, but the committee is still holding that Texas loss against them?
They probably are, but when it comes down to it, if that is going to be their one loss, and they navigate through this gauntlet of games toward the back end of the Big 12 schedule, then they're going to end up a top 4 team, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that quarterback there, wow, did you see the game last week with Baylor?
Oh, yeah. Baker Mayfield has been doing incredible things. He's completing 70% of his passes and averaging exactly 10 yards per attempt, not even completion, per attempt. Only guy in the nation that's doing that right now. And he's not getting talked about. Nobody's bringing his name up with draft possibilities or Heisman mention, nothing. But he's just going about his business and quietly been one of the best quarterbacks in the nation this season.
I mean, he's a gamer. I mean, I had seen some highlights with him over the course of the season. And like you said, no one was talking about him. I mean, he wasn't even on too much on the radar with me as well. But after last week's game, I don't see how anybody could keep him at least, out of the discussion. I mean, with the Heisman, because everybody talks about the Heisman. You got to have a Heisman moment, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a Heisman moment or two. I think he had a Heisman game. I mean, he's running the ball, he's escaping pressure. I mean, there's that one touchdown where he's scrambling and all of a sudden he just turns around and his little running back is just sitting there and he just throws it off his back foot and touchdown for the Sooners. But yeah, I mean, if they can just keep doing what they're doing and Mayfield can keep doing, pulling the magic out, good things. I agree with you. Oklahoma should get into that top 4. Now, who would they, if it came down to Oklahoma or Notre Dame, what happens for that 4th spot?
That's tough.
Because that's the big talk. Like if everything stays the same, like who do you boot out?
Well, Notre Dame still has that game with Stanford coming up next weekend, I believe. So that's going to go a long way. If they come out and I'm not sure where that game is, but if they come out and blow out the Cardinal, then that's probably going to lock down the 4th spot for them. It's going to be hard to pick an Oklahoma team that does have the one loss to Texas, and Notre Dame's one loss would have been to Clemson about a month and a half ago now. So that's a tough one, and I don't know. I'm a Michigan fan. Say what you will. I think there's a bit of a national bias for the Irish. I think if they are in a position where they can be in the playoff, the committee will end up picking them because they do have that name. It's
the brand.
It's one of 5 or 6 schools around the nation that everybody's heard of, and they're known for good football. So they're going to end up getting the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think that's a good take there. That when it comes down to it, I mean, one, you're going to look at the loss, the losses that both teams had, and I mean, Notre Dame's going to have that Clemson loss, and Oklahoma will have the Texas loss, just sticking in their craw like something fierce by that time. So I think right now Oklahoma is going to be a big Stanford fan here in the next week or two. So, but hey, we got in your neck of the woods, we got Michigan State, Ohio State this weekend, and talk about something you can ruin some dreams for Buckeye fans, which I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to. But
me either.
What do you think? Yeah. Well, okay. Shocking news. But what do you see happening in that game? Who do you see winning it?
I haven't figured out who I want to win yet. It's obviously going to be a close game determined by minimizing mistakes and whoever can capitalize. I think the turnover battle is huge. Michigan State is, I think, plus 13 in turnovers this season. Ohio State is -1, so that's something to keep your eye on. If the Buckeyes can keep the ball in their hands, obviously you like their chances a little better. If they start getting a little loose with it, the Spartans will take advantage.
Is Connor Cook good to go?
I was just going to say, I believe Connor Cook is ready to go. I think he will be starting. I can double check that quickly, but last time I heard, he will be in pain, but he's going to play through it. And I'm looking right here. It says it's a shoulder injury, but he will play. So Connor Cook is under center. The Spartans are the underdogs, and that's just the way that they want it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think anybody else other than Connor Cook, Spartan fans would feel a little bit unsure. But I forget where the game is at. Is it in Columbus?
It is.
It is in Columbus. All right. So this is kind of like the big game before the big game. Because they go back to back with Michigan State, right?
Correct. Next week the Buckeyes are up here in Ann Arbor.
What do you think Barrett's going to do? How's that Michigan State defense going to try and defend him, and how's he going to try and counter? Do you think?
Well, they're going to fill the box with probably 9 guys if they can, and say, look, you're going to have to throw it to beat us, because that's been a bit of a weakness, I'd say, for the Spartans. They're not too good in pass defense, but the good thing for them is the Buckeyes quarterbacks, whether it be Cardale or JT, haven't really shown that they can consistently connect with receivers down the field. It's really opened up the game for Ezekiel Elliott. If the Buckeyes can threaten down the field, they don't even necessarily need to complete passes, but if they've got the Spartans defensive backs worried about catching a receiver running behind them, then they're not going to be focused on Ezekiel Elliott, and he's just going to clean up, because that dude is an absolute workhorse. Oh,
he's an absolute beast. I mean, can you imagine him at the next level? I think he's going to do really well at the next level. But, getting back to that, if they're going to put 9 guys, if they're putting 9 guys in the box, they are telling those corners, hey, you are on the island all game. And you were saying that Michigan State's pass defense is a little shaky. So that's, if they can just at least attempt and maybe make a few downhill or downfield throws. Hey, here comes Zeke right up, on the power plays, on the ISOs, all that stuff. So I agree. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how Michigan State plays this because really, I mean, I don't know if Michigan State has really played a great game this year, like a lights out kind of game. They just seem like they're just kind of, I don't know, maintaining, and not doing anything spectacular. I mean, let's face it, they should have lost the Michigan game, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But I mean, would you agree that they just haven't really played all that great this year?
Oh, absolutely, and that's kind of why they worked their way all the way up to, I believe it was number 2 at one point, and then they steadily just kept falling back and back and back because they were winning games, but they weren't blowing teams out, and that's not really their style.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's okay to see that, but that's not going to win you any style points with the media or the committee or anybody whose opinion really matters. So this weekend, I'd expect the Spartans to really come out strong in the first quarter and try to establish that this is their game. It's going to be played under their rules, not the Buckeyes, and try to get the Buckeyes on their heels a little bit and see if they can take the game from there.
And it's not like the Buckeyes. I mean, the Buckeyes have shut one or a few people out, a couple of teams out, but they're not necessarily looking spectacular this season. I mean that's just an outside Big Ten person looking in with the Buckeyes. I mean, we may have a game where it's like 2017. I mean, do you see something like that, or you see it a little bit higher?
Oh
Like,
no, absolutely. It'll be in the teens, low 20s, maybe the high 20s, but I don't think either team scores 30 points, and I don't think it's more than a one possession game when it's all said and done.
so it's maybe like first team to 20 wins kind of deal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Now, what with going back to Connor Cook and his injury, is that injury to his throwing shoulder, or is it you know?
I'm almost sure that it is his throwing shoulder.
Man, oh man, because I can just see Ohio State just blitzing, just to get pressure on him and just take him down.
Yeah.
To make life even more miserable for him. But let's see the other game. Your Wolverines. This is actually a big game for them as well, and they're playing Penn State and Hackenberg. Right, that's his name. Okay, yeah. Can you tell I'm from the West Coast? That's his name, right? The East Coast kid, the big kid, right? But what do you see with your Wolverines?
Well, they gave us a scare last weekend, but they came out on top in
Who'd they play?
grand fashion. They were at Indiana. Took a couple of overtimes, but the Wolverines managed to tie it up late and then really took over in those two overtime periods. It shouldn't have gone to overtime. The Wolverines were getting run over by Jordan Howard, who's a pretty good back for the Hoosiers, but he shouldn't be running for 200 yards against a team that's hardly given up 100 to anybody all season. This weekend for the Wolverines, the offensive line needs to be on top of their game. Penn State leads the nation in sacks with 42, and they've got one guy whose name I don't even know, but I think it's like Nassib or something. He gets after the quarterback, leads the nation in sacks, and that's a big reason why the Nittany Lions do. But that team, even though they do have Hackenberg, they're made up by their defense, as many teams in the Big Ten are. They like to play defense and basically just get their offense to 21 points and see if that'll be good enough.
So this being the first year with Michigan and Harbaugh, what have been your thoughts with Harbaugh and what he's brought to the program now that you're basically a season in with him?
Yeah, he brings toughness. It's weird to say, and say how could you possibly see that, but you can. I've noticed a stark difference from this year's team and last year's team under Brady Hoke, just in the way that they play. The game against Utah, going all the way back to the opener this season, last year's team would have rolled over in the second half and probably got blown out by 3 touchdowns. Harbaugh comes in and gets pretty much the same team. There are some differences, but it's pretty much the same team that Hoke had last year. And he's got these guys playing like there is no tomorrow. We saw it in the stretch where they were just shutting everybody out. He brings a mindset that is very rare for a coach to have. I think he just is an expert motivator, and we've seen it pay off quicker for Michigan than I would have expected, for sure.
And I think it's a return to Michigan football. I absolutely agree with you that it's just he brings that mindset. He's just to call a timeout half the time. He's halfway out on the field calling timeouts, and he's animated. He's banging stuff, and he's letting the kids know, look, this is the way we do it. And if you can't do that, I'll find somebody else on the roster of 90 kids that can play the way I want them to play. And when Michigan to me is one of those programs that when Michigan's good, it's good for all of college football. It's kind of like when Notre Dame's good, it's good for college football. When the Trojans are good, it's good for college football because it just brings that whole, like, your whole fan base into it again. And let's face it, Michigan's fan base, or just Michigan in general, it was like teetering on not being relevant, anymore because just the way that Hoke had them playing. And I don't know if that was Hoke. I don't know if it was, the players or a combination of the two, but it was just, it almost seems like a malaise over the program the last few years. And it's nice to see someone that brings some fire back to Michigan. And certainly for the first time in a long time, I'm going to be watching that Michigan State, or not Michigan State, but the Michigan-Ohio State game. Because I think we see some crazy stuff with Harbaugh in that game, which would be
him great. On one sideline and Urban Meyer on the other. All bets are off.
All bets are off. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. All bets are certainly off. Now, moving on to let's talk about Iowa-Purdue. Now, do we expect? I'm assuming that you expect Iowa to win this game.
Oh yeah, they should roll by about 4 touchdowns. Purdue's one of the worst teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean they have their big drum, right? That's their big thing.
Yeah,
that they have, right? That's about all they got. Yeah, they got a big drum and they're a bunch of engineers. So, or space people, I don't know, one of the two. But what are your thoughts with Iowa? I mean, my thoughts are this is going to play itself out. This has been a nice dream season for them, but they're not beating Sparty or the Buckeyes, in the end. What do you think?
Well, see, that's just the thing. The Hawkeyes, for some reason, just a weird way that the schedule works this year, they've had an easy season like you wouldn't believe. I'm trying to bring it up right now, but they haven't played Ohio State. They haven't played Michigan.
No, they don't have to.
They haven't played Michigan State. The only teams that they've played in the Big Ten that you'd say were really any good are Wisconsin. They beat them 10-6, and Northwestern. You could go either way on Northwestern. They kind of had a bad month there. They beat the Wildcats 40-10, but other than those 2 wins, I mean, it's nothing. You're looking at Minnesota, Indiana, Maryland, all these teams, and they're not beating them by a lot of points. They're just kind of squeaking by. But as we've seen with Florida State is obviously the example that just jumps to my mind immediately. If a Power 5 team is undefeated at this stage in the season, they're going to be considered for a Final Four spot when it's all said and done. It's just a matter of going out and winning the rest of these games. Now, as you mentioned, Iowa's probably going to have a difficult time winning the Big Ten championship game, but if they do, they're going to be one of the 4, and they're going to represent the Big Ten, and that's where they're at right now. Everything's in front of them. They just have to go out and win these games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they win out, they're in. I mean, there is no doubt that they would get in my opinion, if they win out and win the Big Ten championship at all. So what about Clemson? I mean, this is, Clemson. I mean, do you agree with Clemson being number 1, first of all?
I do. Normally I might make the argument that Alabama could be number 1, but I'll save that for a couple of weeks later, I guess. I just want to see Clemson finish out this season and avoid the disaster that everybody seems to be thinking is awaiting them. But they better watch out because a team that, again, no one's talking about, North Carolina, took 1 loss opening week to South Carolina. Since then, they've been undefeated. They're in the other division. It must be the Coastal Division in the ACC, and they're going to come up against Clemson in that championship game. And if the Tigers aren't careful, they're not going to make the playoff after what's been just a tremendous season for them.
Yeah. Who's the quarterback again? I'm just forgetting names today.
At Clemson?
Yeah, Clemson.
That would be Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. I think that kid, I don't know if he's getting all that much Heisman hype or talk. Because he just, I mean, out here it just seems it's pretty quiet in terms of people talking about him. But I think he might be the best athlete in college football. Not necessarily maybe the best quarterback, but he's certainly, I might put him up there in the top 3, top 4 best athlete out, for them and in college football. But yeah, I mean, this game with Wake Forest is like the Iowa Purdue game. This should just be a steamroller of a game for them. But yeah, they have to look out because Carolina just destroyed Duke as well. They took the Dukies to the woodshed like last week or the week before or something like that.
Duke and then the U back-to-back weeks.
That was it. Yeah. Just destroyed them. But I'm really hoping they keep doing what they're doing. They stay in the top 4. They get to the playoff because I think they get once you get there, once you get to the dance. I mean, anything can happen, and if you can beat Notre Dame, you can beat anybody.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would be intimidated by Alabama or Ohio State or, get another shot at Notre Dame or if Oklahoma were to sneak in there. So, Clemson's intriguing to me. I'm like I said, I think they belong at number 1. But we'll see what happens. What about, here we go, Big 12, there's a lot of people will say a lot of bad things about the Big 12, but right now it's probably the best matchups going in college football. Baylor and Oklahoma State.
Well, the Big 12 did it right this season. They, to a degree at least, they do not have a conference championship game. So this is pretty much all they've got. They've got these 4 teams, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU, that are all in the discussion. And they're all playing each other here in this final month of the season. And they're really grabbing the spotlight the last couple of weeks, and again this week, and even next week. This week we've got Baylor and Oklahoma State. Baylor for me was never really as good of a team as everybody was saying that they were. Obviously, quarterback Seth Russell gets hurt, and now they've got a true freshman in, and it's a way different story. But even so, I think even with Russell, they would have lost that game last week to Oklahoma. Oklahoma State dodged a bullet last weekend at Iowa State. They really struggled in that game, found a way to win it, and save their season here. They're still undefeated, and a win here would just be huge for Bedlam next week. Oklahoma State is hosting that game, and big things happening in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, Baylor to me early on, I was like, wow. I mean, yeah, they're playing Little Sisters of the Poor type of schools, the KUs and whoever else is mixed in there. But to put 60 points on the board or 70 points on the board, I'm like, God, that is just, I mean, that's a lot of points, man. And then I started watching them, and then I saw, I'd see, receivers, like if the ball wasn't coming to their side, if the play was going to the opposite side, the receivers kind of take the play off. Like they don't even run. And I'm like, okay, when you play the Oklahoma or the Oklahoma State, you can't have that. I mean, you gotta sell out every route like it's coming to you. And I'm like, man, I think that's going to be a problem. And then when their quarterback goes down, I'm like, oh, this could be it for them. But for a while I was on the Baylor wagon, and then just when you look at them closer, I just went, no, they don't have the pedigree to get it done in my book. So, but Oklahoma, go ahead.
Baylor just can't stack up against these tougher teams. Like we saw it last week against Oklahoma. My thinking is we're going to see it again this week against Oklahoma State. When they run into these tougher teams, they just can't find a way to score like they normally do. As you mentioned, it's all fine. You want to put up 60 points against KU and other assorted teams out there in the West, but when it comes down to it and you're playing in these big games, Baylor just, for whatever reason, can't find it. And that's been what's hurt them the last 2 seasons now.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the years, when Stanford would go play Oregon. And Oregon's racing up and down the field on everybody, putting up all sorts of points and all sorts of statistics. And then Stanford just goes, nope, you're not going in. They stretch them out, they bully them, they push them around. Not necessarily last week, but but I mean, when, even in the Mariota days when they had all that talent, I mean, they still have talent, but I mean, Stanford would just slow it down and they would play Big Ten football on these Pac-12 teams. And that's what reminded me of Oklahoma Baylor last week. Oklahoma's like, okay, you may be fast and you can get up and down the field, but we're big and fast. And most of the time, I think most of us would take big and fast just so we're fast. So, minus that Baylor kid that's like 6'9" and 450 pounds or whatever he is.
Yeah, man, they got him running fullback, and it's hilarious. If you ever watch a Baylor game, just look in the backfield. You'll know who we're talking about.
Could you imagine if you're that linebacker and you see that coming through the A gap? Whoo! I'd be like, go ahead and score. I'd want to play at the next level, so go ahead.
You just take a dive at that point and you hope you blow the play up.
Exactly, and then yell for mommy. Yeah. Now, there is a ton of stuff going on with coaching right now. Rumors flying around with Charlie Strong in Texas, rumors flying around with Les Miles. Then I don't even know how you put this, but you got Nick being Nick, or something, he's giving marriage advice, at a presser. So let's start with Les Miles. Now he started off, he's like a Michigan guy, and he came from Michigan to LSU, correct?
I'm not too sure on the history. What I do know is the last 2 times that Michigan has been looking for a head coach, Les Miles' name was brought up more than anybody else's, and he does have that reputation of being a Michigan guy. So I assume that he does come from
have some roots or something.
Yeah, at some point.
Now, okay, so LSU was in the top 4, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And they looked good. They were doing well. Fournette was running over and through everybody. He had 1,200 yards after 9 games or whatever it ended up being. Then they lose their last 2 games. And now they're saying Miles is coaching for his job this game and the last game. Do you agree that he should be coaching for his job?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's been there for years. He's established his program. Everybody knows what's going on with Les Miles. They know what they can expect. And the last few years have been a little bumpy. LSU gets to this point where we start talking about them possibly making a run at a championship, and then they come across the Alabamas or the Ole Miss or whoever it is in the SEC West that knocks them down a couple of pegs. And, if I'm Les Miles, I got to be thinking, all right, go ahead. We lose these next 2 games. Go ahead and fire me. I'll go anywhere I want to right now. There's not a program in this country that wouldn't love to have Les Miles be the coach. And, if LSU wants to give him that ultimatum, I think it's a little bit it's just bad for business, really.
Yeah, I mean, they were undefeated. Now they got 2 losses, and they're essentially out of the playoff mix. But you take in the totality of what he's done there. I don't know. I don't know what people can be thinking when they think that he's, he's lost something or anything like that. And I'm totally with you. He could go down to Miami. Some people were talking about, that he could be interested in the USC job. Could you imagine Les Miles with the LA crowd and just his personality at USC and all that talent that he would, oh my gosh.
That'd be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch.
Wow. The LA people would just eat that guy up. I mean, they would love him. But in reality, Mitch, where do you think, or what do you think happens?
Oh, I think in reality, LSU wins these next 2 games, and Les Miles is still coaching this time next year at LSU, and we're probably going to have the same discussion. I mean, this is just one of those fan bases that is frankly tired of seeing their rival continually win, and they haven't had as much success as they think they should be having. Les Miles has been there the entire time, and they've seen him win a national championship, so they know he is capable of it. And now it seems like they're expecting him to do that every year, and that's just not realistic, especially when you play in the conference and specifically the division that the LSU Tigers play in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're guaranteed to look over on the other sideline and you're seeing Saban at least, one time. And, I mean, it's the coaching in that conference is, far and above, many other Power 5 conferences, so yeah, I think the same thing. I think Miles wins his games. Now, what if he splits these next 2 games? Does he, and he ends up with 3 losses? I mean, that's, that fan base might be sucking down moonshine like crazy at that point.
The way I look at it at this point, they've already got the 2 losses. They're not going to make the playoffs. So really picking up a 3rd loss doesn't, obviously you want to win every game that you play, but that 3rd loss doesn't really kill you. You're still going to make a decent bowl game because you're a big team in a big conference. But if he splits, maybe they do make a move. But like I said, I think they'd be fools to go try to find somebody else to do the same job that Les Miles has proven that he can do.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Charlie Strong. I like Charlie Strong. I like the job that he did at Louisville, and I think he was a good hire, great hire for Texas. First African American head coach for Texas, and I think that says a lot. But if you're Charlie Strong, do you want to stay there?
That's a great question. At this point, I'm not sure that I do because, again, like I said about LSU, Texas is just a fan base that's absolutely nuts. They want to win at all costs, and they want to do it now. They don't care what's going on. They just want to see results, and it's been a struggle for them. Charlie Strong is trying his hardest, I'm sure, but you can't just walk into a place and change the culture and bring a mediocre team to a higher level. That's a very hard jump to make, especially in a conference like the Big 12, where it's pretty much every man for himself. I mean, teams are beating up on each other. There's 2 at the bottom, I guess you could say, but Texas is closer to the bottom than they are the top at this point. And it's a rough situation to be in, but he had to know that when he signed up for it. So it's hard to really feel bad for him.
Yeah. I mean, the expectations, like you said, at Texas are just off the chart. And at this point where the program's been the last while with the program, they can't, it just can't be. I understand that they're high, but you got to have a dose of reality a little bit that they're not Texas. They're not the Texas that you and I grew up with. That program is not even close to that right now. And I don't know if I'm Charlie Strong. I mean, I was reading something today that, behind the scenes, he's had people talk to the U at Miami about their opening. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he's somewhere else next year, which would be unfortunate. Awesome. Which would be unfortunate, I think, in the long run for Texas. But I think if he was at Miami, I think he could do some things there and not have the pressure that he has at Texas, and just people just breathing down his neck all the time. Not that he wouldn't have people breathing down his neck at Miami or any other place that he would go, but Texas is just, I mean, they're right on top of you 24/7 down there. So, all right, Nick Saban. The hell is going on with him?
I don't think anything's going on. This is pretty much what we've come to expect. Is just, as you said before we came on here, just a couple instances throughout each season where he takes a couple of shots and seems like maybe he rolled out of the wrong side of the bed or didn't have his morning coffee or something. But man, it's entertaining to hear him at a press conference because he doesn't hold back any shots. He will let you know what's on his mind.
No, and sometimes when he goes on these rants, I'm like, Nick, did you not take your Ritalin or something? Because your speech here, your little rant is going all over the place. Talking about marriage and then talking about stuff and jumping to somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, if this was an essay, I'd be like, okay, there's no organization here. Nick, help me out. But,
there's no transition sentence.
Yeah, exactly. There's no nothing. But yeah, I agree with you. Like we were saying off air before we started it, he's good for about two of these, 2 or 3 of these, maybe a year. And like I said, you think he didn't have his coffee. I personally I don't think he's had something for a while to, put him in a mood like that. But, would he move to Texas?
No.
You think?
I don't think so.
If they got rid of Strong, that's their first phone call.
Oh, well, absolutely. Everybody knows that, but that's just the thing. We've been there before. We've seen it play out, and Saban, I don't think he wants to do that. I don't know.
Because that would be a rebuilding job.
Yeah, and that's all. That's what it comes down to. If he decides that he wants to take a program that is nationally known, like a Texas or a USC or one of those big programs that we keep talking about, if he decides that rebuilding one of those is what he wants to do again, then he can go on over to Austin and do that. But if he's thinking, maybe I want to just keep doing what I'm doing, things are pretty good in Tuscaloosa for him right now, and
have people pay for his house. Yeah,
I don't know if I could leave if I was him, but obviously I'm not him. I can't speak to what motivates him, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if it came down to Texas and USC, I'm going out to LA every time. I mean, the amount of talent that they got out there and what Saban, holy smokes, that would be interesting if he went out, if he did do that, and if Kiffin is still his OC. Oh, that would be interesting. Not that Kiffin would go with.
Kiffin's the name that I keep thinking of. We're hearing about all these openings around college football, and nobody's bringing up Lane Kiffin's name, but that he wants to get another head coaching job after spending these last couple of seasons under Nick Saban. We've seen them kind of rub off on each other, have some strange encounters on the sideline, I guess you could say. But that's just two great football minds clashing up at the same time. And Kiffin, I think, is the guy to watch if you're trying to figure out the first domino to fall into place in this coaching carousel that we're going to have in the offseason.
I think with Kiffin, I think he'd be better served to go, maybe if Herman leaves Houston, that Kiffin goes to Houston, goes kind of lower, not maybe a Power 5 team, but, a team like Houston where he can go in and he can put in an offense that's, fairly much the same as what Herman had, and you have the athletes for it. And then kind of jump from Houston to somewhere else. Cause I'm not sure that another Big 5, Power 5 school is willing to roll the dice with Kiffin just yet. But I agree with you. I mean, Kiffin gets knocked all the time for, his coaching and what happened at USC and Tennessee and stuff. I still think he's a very, very good offensive coordinator and offensive mind. It just may be, maybe at the time for Tennessee, maybe at the time for USC, that he just, I don't know, maybe just wasn't ready, for the big lights like that. But who knows? I mean, it's always fun to see where these guys are going to fall and what actually plays out, in the end. So you got anything else?
I think that's it for me.
That's it for you. All right. Tell the people where they can find you.
Find me on campus Pressbox. Tuesdays, we got the Michigan Wolverines column. Thursdays, I'll be telling you which 5 games you should be watching this weekend. The picks on Friday, I'm holding a very slight lead over Tim Bach, and I'm trying to bring home the picks championship for campus Pressbox this season. So check that out and wish me luck. You can find me on Twitter at Great Gatzke, GreatGatzke, and find me in the streets of Ann Arbor.
I don't know if that sounds good. Yeah, well, you can find me, Mike Wilson, also at Campus Press Box, Pac-12 senior writer, writing about things Pac-12, putting things in the pipeline for Mitch. You can find me on Twitter at Pigskin Opinion, and you can even email me if you so choose at mike.wilson@campuspressbox.com. So for Mitch and myself, we will see you guys next week.